What's going on? Boys, thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. We talk on this channel sometimes about the importance of doubt, especially self-doubt, and I was thinking about it more today. We're supposed to live in this age of anxiety and mental illness, yet everyone assumes they're right or they're great. They might have doubts, but those doubts are focused either on the external world or on parts of themselves unrelated to their cores. People almost never doubt their cores. And it's blatant enough. I'm not usually big on tricks, but again, it's so blatant you can't not. If you want or need people to identify with something, give them a list of options. Options they can identify themselves with. And make one better than the others. Make all of them true, but make one better. And how you evaluate what better is will change depending on the circumstance. I like the way Saint O'Neill uses the word sexy because it's rarely related to sexuality. It's all about appeal. And if you make one option sexier than the others, people will invariably identify with that one. Of course, again, reiterating, you need to make all of the options you present them with true, but you can sell one better. And again, what is sexier will depend on the audience and the circumstance, but sexier. That's a trick that always works. And it's funny because when you use this strategy, what you can get people to identify themselves with might be completely different. Well, I mean, it'll certainly be completely different from what they are, but it'll even be complete, or can even be completely different from what they think they are. And I think the reason this works is society's obsession with image, with self-image especially. And when I say self-image, I don't just mean the way someone views themselves, but also the way, well, I guess you could tie this under image, but it's more self-image, the way they want to believe they are perceived, as opposed to the way they are actually perceived. But it all stems from a terrible fear of doubt, of self-doubt. People are terrified at their cores they might be insubstantial, or wrong, or judged poorly. And the reason we say doubt, and particularly self-doubt, is important is because it protects you from a bunch of different things. First, manipulation, trickery, and you want to be protected from that because if it's clear enough I could figure it out, and it's easy enough I can use it, and consistently get good results, you know people better at this are using this, and they're probably using forms that I can't figure out, above my capacities. You really want to feel sexy, or you're terrified of feeling unsexy, whatever that entails for you and your situation. But it also protects you from self-hells. We live in a self-help age. We live in a self-hell age. Self-hells are things that terrify me. A self-hell is a hell of your own creation. Not just relating to the idea of building the external world around you in a way you'll hate, creating problems for yourself, but more in the way I mean it, trapping yourself in a mental state, in a spiritual state you are unsatisfied with, miserable with no ability to break yourself out. And because you create self hells in your pursuit of feeling appealing, crawling down into the can't get out hole usually feels good. And when something feels good, you aren't thinking much about it. Maybe I should title this video Self Hells instead of Think Poorly of Yourself. You're chasing a sexy identity or self identification, running from an unsexy self identification, and then when you finally reach the bottom of the hole, that rush stops feeling good because it's false. It's not what you are. And I find when you, to your core, believe your core is something it isn't, when you aren't real, you can't live in the real world in any satisfactory way. And not only do you get hit with misery, and when I say misery, I don't mean or just mean a life that doesn't feel good. Because you can live a life that doesn't feel good and still feel satisfied on that righteousness level. I'm talking about the misery that comes with knowing you aren't who you aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing, your soul is a failing lie. That's the misery you get hit with. And then it compounds, it multiplies, it grows over years. And the longer you stay in this place, the less able you are and the less willing you are to climb out. Because you believe you've been living this life for so long, you believe this misery hole is preferable to the truth of what you are and what the world is. You can escape self hells, but it's painful. It's painful because you need to accept what you are, and what you are, you don't have much control over. You can work on what you do with what you are, but you can't change what you are. That's scary because what if it doesn't appeal to you? Or what if it's unsexy? So most people will choose to stay in the hole despite all the damage it's doing to their soul, because in the hole, they at least feel like they have some control over this fake identity, and they're clinging on to the hope that identity could be sexy. They could make it sexy. They could get back that rush they felt as they were descending into the hole. And I think it's common to live and die in these holes. That's why they're scary to me. You could end up in one without realizing it, and then live your entire life in a miserable, deluded lie. A lie you have no control over ultimately. That's another part of this, fucked up part of this, that scares me about them. We mention sexiness, we mention appeal. You want to appeal to yourself, yes. You also want to appeal to other people, but once you're this far down the hole, you don't know what is or isn't appealing to other people, so what you're hunting is what you think will be appealing to other people. So you aren't just controlled by other people's opinions, which is not a good life to live. You're controlled by their ghosts, informed in part by your perceptions, which you never doubt, and also what the media is feeding you. In other words, you'll walk happily into layers of subjugation, and then you will choose to stay there because you're afraid of learning the truth about yourself. Normally we get into tangents and those take over. In this case, I wanted to get into a tangent and then the main point took over. Let's get back into that tangent for a second. Breaking out of self hells, I imagine, feels like realizing you're in the Truman Show, or realizing you're adopted and the child of rape, not a child, the child, or basing your entire identity around being an anti flat earther and then realizing the earth is flat. Truths that are so, or would be so ridiculous to your frame of reference, to your self conception, or so painful to the identity you think you have or you want to have, that your ego dissolves totally sober. These realizations that both take you from being an individual to being just an awareness attached to some body, and then also what you actually are is nothing like what you thought or wanted. Actually, it's like the Uncle Ruckus thing. You're 102% black with a 2% margin of error. Realizations like those fuck your life up. Could you imagine looking in the mirror and realizing you are in fact black? Bone chilling. You're you're as far from Yakub's light as an individual can be. That shit. You ever have a brain black? Thinking about Yakub just detonated a bomb on my train of thought. You should doubt yourself. And not just superficial aspects of yourself, things that you believe or hold out some hope you can change if that's what you want, but also core aspects of your identity, core beliefs about the world. And that's tricky because if you're doubting everything at all times, how do you have any identity? How do you function? Well, I think there's a method to it. First, you need to decide if this is important to you. Because what you're signing up for is not enlightenment or working to achieve enlightenment. By the end of this, you won't be enlightened. You won't succeed, probably. It's often more comfortable and more productive to stay in the hole. What you're choosing is not to feel gnawed at somewhere deep inside. I think it's important to remember getting out of the matrix is not a happy thing. You're entering a hell world into a fight you will lose. But at least it's real. Does that matter to you? Does it matter to you? Does realness matter to you at the cost of everything else? Including the idea that you could achieve some victory or you could ascend to some higher plane. If you are willing to pay those prices and receive almost nothing you can be happy with, then go ahead, but that's the first decision. The next step is to build a worldview or an identity based on things as they are as best you can. And because this is all, the real world is all shadows moving within shadows, a good place to start is by examining aspects of the world, and especially aspects of yourself, you are uncomfortable with, you're hiding from, or that you hold sacred, that you feel most certain of. You locate these things and ask yourself if what you think you are, what the world is the case. Usually it won't be. And in doing this, you are letting go of things. So, how do you find the things in yourself and in the world that are real? Well, locating the causes of things is very difficult. Again, not just in the world, but also in yourself. You're full of causes and effects you're totally unaware of. I've been writing more recently. I've been in writing mode recently, and it's exhausting. But one of the things being in writing mode shows you is how much shit is stuffed inside your unconscious at all times. And the other thing, it's not like we think about it often like an ocean with all this stuff at the bottom or underneath the water, but that's not the case. Your unconscious surrounds you at all times. There's no barrier. The only barrier is what your conscious mind is capable of noticing at any one moment. The reason I bring up writing is your unconscious will shit things into your writing that not even your conscious mind will pick up until you go back and notice something is a little odd about this or that. Or fuck, maybe you don't notice it, but then you run into, in the external world, that thing somewhere else. It's disturbing. Writing is great, but it's disturbing because it shows you how little of you is you. You, your conscious plus your unconscious, is a horde of accrued information that you don't even remember. And then your conscious mind is where you're pointing the flashlight on this horde of collected shit. Quotes, you are an awareness lighting up things gathered from the external world. You aren't you anywhere near as much as you think you are. My point in bringing this up is when you're writing and when you're being, finding the causes behind things, we always try to go to the causes first. That's almost impossible. It's best to start at the effects, the results, because you can see them. You might have no idea what caused them. I'm sure you have some ideas, some theories, but those are theories. The effects are things you can see and probably things you feel. Make those your reality first. That is the truth. You're a lot of what and almost no why. And then you start trying to piece things together. And once again, you'll do this not by starting with one effect and then looking for the cause, but rather by looking at a series of effects you think are related, and then it's like detective work, finding the patterns in the effects and then developing theories about the causes, and then maybe once you've worked out enough patterns, built up enough theories, maybe finding one cause. But of course, once you've located this cause, you'll find it's just another effect. And this is your life now. You have almost no say in who you are and what the world is. You are a series of cascading effects combined into one effect in a world of effects. And from this, I think your identity and your worldview, what you view yourself to be, what you view the world to be, becomes not, well, it is a singular thing. You'll feel it as a singular thing, but really it's a collection of causes and effects you have gathered up and feel pretty confident about. You aren't a person, you're a series of charts. Patterns in yourself, patterns in the world, none of which you have much say in, though maybe in the past, maybe even now, you're trying to convince yourself you do, so you don't feel like just a cause and an effect. And you aren't just a cause and an effect. We'll get to that. But even when you aren't just a cause and an effect, you're still just a cause and an effect, but a more active one. Now, this is where the next step comes in. Because once you've built up enough of these observations that hold, that are based on effects, you think you have a good idea of who and what you are and what the world is. You're actually prepping yourself to enter another self-hell. Because now you think you have it all figured out, but you don't. You've figured out one self-configuration and world configuration within one moment within all of space-time. You've figured out a moment, and you probably haven't even figured out this moment totally. And you think this moment will go on forever, and it won't. One truth that's seemed to hold for me for a long time is that existence is fucking with you. You think you've developed power over yourself in the world, or you've developed hope that you could have control and power over yourself in the world if only you could figure out all of it, and that's not the case. In reality, you and the world are changing moment to moment. You're trying to get a degree of self-power back by submitting to the facts. But the fact is, the facts are always changing. You need to doubt the world, doubt yourself, doubt everything you think you know, in intervals at least. You can't do it every second of every day. You wouldn't be able to function, but you need to do it sometimes. You know, in this whole trying to figure out the universe thing, it sucks dick that you have to exist. You need to doubt so you don't cling to ideas or to structures you've modeled of the world that will lead you happily, comfortably, down into the exact same hole you started this entire process to get out of. An example. I have a very negative view of people and the world, and myself too in all this. I have this view because these are the effects I have witnessed. Oh, and that's another little fold in all this too, is I still believe there is something hyper-individual and key in instinct. It's a complete contradiction. Existence is fucking with you. But anyway, the effects deprived of other things are negative, or they make me feel negative. They don't line up with what people say the world is or should be. And what the world is not fun or pretty or aligned. Very bad. And right now, so far, that point of view has held. And you hold this point of view not only because it's the case, but also because it makes you feel like you can figure out a way to get above it. If all the pieces are aligned in this way, then there must also be a way aligned, a path aligned, to navigate them well. But wouldn't it be a tragedy if this worldview that you adopted or came into by necessity, trying to figure out a way to make it work, but it's very negative, painful, miserable, wouldn't it be tragic if the world changed and became better, but you were too attached to the worldview you built based on one moment to see it and to adjust? That's terrifying to me, because there's no guarantee that will happen. There's nothing indicating it will happen. but it could. And would you be able to see it and adjust if it did? Would you be willing to sacrifice again your view of the world and your view of yourself, go through that pain, re enter that utter powerlessness to stay attuned with the facts? And again, that's just making that decision again. That has nothing to do, or that says nothing of being able to recognize it's time to make that decision in the first place. That's what a self hell is. You're a creature designed to trap itself mentally. Look at your consciousness and identity based on what we said about the writing and how your unconscious works. Your awareness is limited and limiting by nature. That's why you need doubt. That's why you need these doubt sessions, especially when you can feel the change. You can feel that gnawing coming back. And frankly, you need it when you don't feel that gnawing too. Because who's to say you will feel there's something wrong once you've entered a self-hell? It's terrifying and painful because it means you're starting from scratch again. You're back to confusion, and ultimate vulnerability. You're designed to hate those things. That's why people will spend their entire lives in self-hells. Not because they've actually achieved security, or they actually know anything, but because they feel they have. I think the truth is you should never feel either of those things, because you'll never be either. Yet, another contradiction, maybe you should feel those things because for some reason you need to. We're designed to want them, to seek them, even when we're seeking them by trying to deny we're seeking them, or by trying to live without them. It's tricky, it's painful, it's scary. And if we're looking at it only on a level we can perceive from, there is really no reason to do it other than the suspicion this feels like something we should be doing because we're called to do it. But you're guaranteed not to get anything good out of it. Although there is another way to look at that, too. Going back to the very beginning, people identifying only with archetypes or ideas, worldviews that position them as the ones who have it figured out, who know how to do things, who are secure materially and mentally, emotionally and spiritually. That's a doomed proposition even within the lowest realms of reality. Because what people do when they do that is they identify with this thing that makes them feel good, and then they don't do anything else, because what they wanted was the feeling, not the truth in any form, and then they do nothing else, ensuring they'll get nothing else. Now that's fine for most people because that feeling is all that matters for most people, even as the foundation they're standing on crumbles around them and ensures once the last brick falls, they won't be able to feel those things and won't be able to get back into a position from which they can feel those things. What I think you should do, well, there are two things you should do on this lower level. Either identify with the lowest shitfuck archetype on the totem pole, or recognize or identify with not something lower on the totem pole, but identify with not something high on the totem pole. So instead of getting your security blanket dopamine hit and then doing nothing, you're stuck with problems that need to be solved, even if you don't actually need to solve them. This is the mindset you need to be in. And then you work on them and you build out your foundation. You secure your position by telling yourself your position isn't secure. Both because your position actually almost certainly isn't secure, but also because it keeps you moving. Instead of telling yourself you're great and everyone sucks and everything is okay and then doing nothing else. Guaranteeing you'll be trapped in a self-hell. Because existence isn't just fucking with you. Existence is malevolent. Our condition is that of a creature prompted to grow our arrogance and feelings of security as tall as possible so the universe can cut us down and make big pleasant noises for it when we fall. We're designed to lose. It's just a matter of trying to lose as little as possible or as low as possible and denying the bastards the satisfaction. And you deny the bastards the satisfaction by torturing yourself or by trying to be not what you are. But then that opens the question, okay, if you have it in you to try to be not what you are, then isn't that also part of what you are? I think yes, but I don't know what that thing is. Maybe that's also what we're trying to find out here. But we've been talking for 30 minutes. I'm dead. I'm not alive anymore. I have to shit. Constipation is fucking killing me. It's not enough that I can't sleep and that I need to pee all the time, and then when I need to pee I stand in front of the toilet and just wait, and I have to do some Douglas Adams shit and trick myself into thinking I'm somewhere else so I can piss. No, the constipation is here. And it's not just constipation, it's nausea constipation. We're done. It's over. Over and done. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.